Good, whatever time of day it is for you, person. Hello. This is the worst intro ever. Anyway, um, let's talk about the ego. Let's talk about mind-heart coherence. Let's talk about the inner parasite. Because I've been trying to understand the ego more and more and more because you can't get rid of it. So you can't just hate the ego, right? Like the ego is the mind, who the mind thinks I am, right? It's like this mind identity. That's what the ego is. And so you can't get rid of it. You just gotta expand it. You gotta teach it how to follow the heart, mind-heart coherence, heart-based consciousness. That is the next evolution of consciousness that is available to all of us. Moving from solar plexus, body consciousness, thinking you're just a human who has a soul, but no, realizing that we can move into the heart and live from the place that we are a soul, that we are a soul who has a body. And then even higher than that, a sixth dimensional perspective. Fifth dimensional is living as a soul, knowing you're a soul. You're an eternal being. And then living as the higher self is the sixth dimensional perspective of who you are, knowing that's who you are, living from that place, allowing the higher self to embody you. But we start with, we've got to understand ourselves. And we have to understand that we're separate from the mind, right? So the ego is something that is formed as we grow up. It is something that is formed, an identity of sorts, and it is created in order to protect us. The problem with that is we are humans. We are mammals. There was an evolution of mammals that occurred on this planet. And we have that reptilian brain or whatever, where the fear center is. And unfortunately, when we're born here, I guess fortunately, because we're creating the experience, we don't remember who we are. We don't really know who we are. And we have to learn. And we have to worry about what dangers there are, because for thousands and thousands and millions of years, as evolution took place on the planet, fear was important, because all these animals that didn't have this self-awareness, we had to be worried about getting eaten or falling and dying, or I don't know, getting hurt, or being exiled from the pack, because that meant death. Like, we have to be accepted, we have to be validated, we have to be approved of, we have to be a certain way so that people love us so we don't die. Like, that's the fear underlying all of that, caring what people think and needing the approval and stuff like that. So we're humans. We are consciousness projecting into a human incarnation and experiencing what it would be like to be a human that's evolved on this planet as a mammal for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That is what we are experiencing. That is reality. That is seeing things clearly. And when you know this, understand that you can create your reality. You are the consciousness. You are also the human. You have to learn how the human works. You have to learn how the brain works. You have to learn how the heart works. And the heart, knowing that the heart, confirmation, God, every day. It's always something. Always something with them. But the heart is connected to your higher self, to your truth, to love. It's really what needs to be guiding the way, but we have learned to take on these mind identities, identified as the mind, identified as this body, rather than the observer of it. And so the mind thinks it's in control, that it has to be in control, that it needs to know what's going on to keep everything safe and everybody okay. So what we're doing to evolve the human species is to recognize that we are separate from the mind, that it thinks all on its own, all the time, without us consciously wanting to do it, right? And when it comes up with fear, realize that that is a choice. Is the fearful perspective your truth? Or is the loving perspective your truth? You have to decide. You have to decide. There's more than one way to look at it, and the only one who can decide to look at it a certain way is you, and that decides the energy you're putting into it. And the energy you put out, the energy you give out, is what you get back. You see? So it's a game of energy. It's a game of energy, and you have the choice to choose between love or fear. And when we develop these egos, there's something that I really like the term of now, which is the inner parasite. I think it's absolutely the right way to look at it, because we're not killing the ego. You can't kill it. You can't get rid of it. Death isn't what we think it is, right? It's just a transition. So we're transitioning the ego from one perspective to a higher perspective. And the higher perspective changes everything, because how you are internally is what's projected externally. It's a mirrorverse, a multi-dimensional, multi-frequential mirrorverse, hall of mirrors, like R.J. Spina says. And it's so the more that we self-reflect, the more that we change the energy within us, the faster you will see your reality change. And understand there's a delay, right? Because you can change the energy in a moment, but the external or the physical takes longer to manifest, right? We all know this. And so it's important to stay consistent and persistent in what we're changing. So this inner parasite, it's the thing that when you're feeling low, let's say when you're young, you made a mistake, you got angry, you hit somebody, you hurt somebody, you did something. Your parents would be disappointed in you. They'd be mad at you. And you didn't know what was going on, but this created a lot of fear in you. And eventually, let's say this happens a couple times, it's not a big deal. But if you grew up in a household where it happened a lot, or if it wasn't safe to be emotional around people, and you learned that expressing your grief, your sadness is bad, it's not good if you're crying, or expressing your anger is bad, it's not good if you're angry, then you grow up suppressing these things and getting mad at yourself, beating yourself up because you think there's something wrong with you whenever you feel anything but happy or content. It's like the wounding has just been passed down generation after generation for such a long time. It's been this fear. I mean, seriously, like humans have been living mostly in fear without real protection around them for hundreds of thousands of years, last couple 100,000 at least. And only in the last 100 years have we mostly moved indoors, and have more safety, or more perceived safety anyway, where we have time to rest and reflect and understand ourselves better. But then of course we created more circumstances over time, so we moved indoors and it got a little bit safer, but then we had to start making money, right? We had to start paying the bills, and that became more of a demand, and it took more of our time to do that. And so then the time we did have was spent relaxing or getting things done around the house, or resting, and it eventually became very stressful, very overwhelming. And mentally, our health declined a lot. And when our mental health declines, our physical health is not far to follow. Mentally and emotionally, if we are suppressing emotions, if we're not able to express ourselves, if we have all these limiting beliefs and we talk terribly to ourselves, if mentally we're always putting our focus on what's making us miserable, the problems, the issues, and looking at things through the lens of fear, or I'm never going to get through this, I can't handle this, all this stuff, I'm a victim, this person did this to me, when we look at life through those lenses, we create a nightmare. We create a literal hell that we're living in, and slowly it just builds more and more and more until we heal, until somebody heals, like we have to do that. And that's what, thankfully, the consciousness has risen to a certain place. We are giving ourselves more time. We are taking time to heal, and we are taking the time to observe and realize I'm not the mind. I'm not the ego. Everything I've ever done, reacting to, living through as an ego, I can forgive it all because it's not really who I am. I didn't understand myself. I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's okay. It's okay. It's all forgiven. True forgiveness is knowing that it's already forgiven. And then you start to live consciously because you've let go of the shame and the guilt. You can come into the present moment and be at peace with yourself, right? I was never the one thinking all those terrible thoughts about myself. That was the inner parasite, the wounded part of the ego that was just trying to protect me, and it didn't know any better. But now that I know better, and I have taught this mind who I am, and taught it that it doesn't need to be afraid, that fear never has to be our truth, that we always have the choice, that we are the creators of our reality. I am the creator of my reality. The mind listens to what I say, to how I define everything in my life, the meaning I assign to everything, understanding that it's all inherently neutral, and I choose the meaning. And so if something was a story, and let me tell you that there have been some stories I have told myself that are horrendous, like terrible things, totally not true at all. 12 years ago, I decided that I was unattractive and ugly, for example, like the major like self-image issues, right? And like the person, like all the people I were into over the years, which wasn't a lot, but it never worked out. It never panned out. I didn't have my first girlfriend until I was like 22. Like I had all this fear and all this apprehension, and nothing ever felt right. I didn't realize back then that I was trusting the energy. I didn't understand how to read energy. I didn't understand everything was energy. And the resistance I felt to like taking a chance or something like that, or putting myself out there, right? It never felt right. It never felt good. And so I was actually trusting my intuition the whole time. And meanwhile, I was thinking that I missed opportunities, or that the reason nothing ever worked out was because of, I just wasn't good enough, or they didn't think my appearance was good enough. And that perception of myself created a story that would perpetuate for years in my life. And so even though I've become much more loving of myself and accepting of myself, and I am grateful for this body and my appearance and everything, and I love being Brian, I do now, there was still that teenage part of me that was so judgmental and so lost in fear over these things, and feeling heartbreak and all that stuff, but giving up on myself and thinking I guess I just didn't deserve good things or healthy relationships or whatever in my life. It just realizing, I've been working on this a lot recently, which is why I bring it up, but realizing now that version of me never even existed. Not in reality. It was never true. It was never true. I was trusting my heart, and I was protecting myself. And even though I didn't perceive it that way at the time, it doesn't make it less true now that I can see it that way. Now that I can see it that way and I know the truth, it becomes lighter. My chest feels lighter, my heart feels lighter, it expands more. And that's how I know it's my truth. That's how I discern that it's my truth, because it feels lighter, it's freeing me, it's liberating me. Love liberates. More confirmation. Love liberates. It frees you. It frees you from that mental prison that the mind identity has clung to for its safety, thinking that it's saving itself, but it doesn't know that the only thing that's really real here is me, and that I'm already an eternal spiritual being, that I'm already my higher self, that I have always existed, I will always exist, and I don't need to be afraid of that being taken away. That there's actually nothing for me to really be afraid of, that I can always trust my intuition and my heart, and I don't need to let fear-based thoughts have anything to do with that. If I feel resistance to something, okay, I need to take a pause. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. Maybe that's just not for me, right? But something that I feel open to, love, and it's inviting me in too. It's like it's reciprocated, right? It's like love is being given and received, and then I am giving love back and they're receiving it, and that is how you know that the energy of something is for you. It is good for you. But if you let these negative thoughts, this inner parasite take over, even though you'll feel with clarity, like, oh, like, you know, especially with like relations, like people in your life, friendships or family members or whatever, like how can you tell if this person really has the best intentions for you? It's the energy. It's not necessarily what they say or what they do. Sometimes they make mistakes. People have an ego that they have not healed that makes mistakes. But what's their true intentions with you? What is their energy with you? Do they really want the best for you? Or is ego getting in the way and they are being selfish and stuff like that? Are they draining you? And so you can know that when you feel light and you feel love and you feel expansive, that it's the truth. And even if then after that, fear and insecurities come in, trust that truth that you felt. The fears and insecurities only have to do with you, not about the relationship, not about the other person, or even your relationship to something else. It has nothing to do with them or it. The question is, what are you doing to yourself? What are you putting your focus on? What are you giving power and energy to? Are you afraid of what they think? Are you afraid of what could happen? Or do you trust the energy that you initially felt? Do you trust yourself? Discernment is so important. We have to discern what is our truth and what is the inner parasite creating fear, creating things that we don't want. Can we laugh at that? Can we just say, I'm done with you, you know? It's not an easy process necessarily, but it doesn't have to be. It's as hard as we make it. Honestly, it is. It just is. And I've made it really fucking hard on myself a lot of times. I won't lie. I've made it really hard on myself, but I promise that even when you make it hard on yourself, you're eventually led to your truth. If that is your intention. If you stick to the wisdom, if you trust the wisdom, even when you're going through the thick of it, even when you go through such difficult times and you hurt so much inside and you question yourself and you doubt yourself and you have to put attention on things that don't make you feel good because you've not been perceiving them in a healthy way, in a loving way. But then it always leads you to your truth, to being able to heal that. It's not a cruel universe we live in. It's a loving one. And it wants us to have what we want. It wants us to receive what we give. It wants us to have free will, to be able to discern and trust ourselves, to stop looking outside of ourselves for every answer, to realize that our truth is our instinct, is our intuition, what feels right. More confirmation. What feels right? This is how you can start to really look at the ego in a healthier way, distinguish the inner parasite as separate from everything else. It is this little thing that you can flick away at any point, any time, because if anything, this is the way I would look at it. It keeps bringing up things you don't like to think about, the things that make you feel bad. What's the underlying belief there? What's the shadow? And for me, You know, I've been feeling unworthy, and I had a story. They're crazy. I had a story that I kept coming back to, that I didn't want to even think about, that made me feel sick to think about. But there was a misperception. I didn't realize how to take my power back, and then I found it, and I empowered myself. And now I see that those things that were bothering me were just deceptions, lies, deceivers. Good Lord. Do I need to check on that? No, because that's a fear-based thought. They're fine. Probably. So, I'll leave you with that. And then, yeah. Remember, it's all love. This universe, this existence, this reality, it's love. You get to choose. You get to choose what it means to you. You get to choose what everything means to you. And if something is not serving you, find another way to look at it, or just fucking let it go, because it's not worth it, you know? It's not worth it. And ask for help. Ask your guides. Ask your higher self. Ask God for help. You'll get help every time. Ask and you shall receive. No doubt. People are crazy. All right. Anyway. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.